No one in Fresh Mart noticed the old man at first. He stood quietly in line, holding a small basket filled with essentials, bread, milk, and a few cans, items chosen with the careful restraint of someone who knew the value of every dollar. His suit was simple but dignified, his posture calm, his presence unassuming. When his turn came to register, he reached into his coat pocket, paused, and then slowly realized something was missing. The air shifted. Eyes turned. Silence crept across the store as the cashier, a young black woman with tired but kind eyes, looked at the total and then at the man who softly admitted he had forgotten his wallet. What happened next would leave the entire store frozen in stunned silence. Before we continue, don't forget to share, comment, and subscribe to Black Voice Story for more powerful and emotional stories. Fresh Mart's at the corner of Maple Avenue and 3rd Street, a place where the hum of daily life flowed without interruption. The store was known not for luxury but for familiarity. Regular customers came and went with routine ease, greeting employees by name and pushing carts filled with predictable patterns of their lives. Yet beneath that routine lived quiet stories of struggle, dignity, and resilience that often went unseen. Behind Register 3 stood Amara Johnson, a young black cashier who had learned far too early that kindness could be both her strength and her burden. She worked long shifts, often standing for hours with a calm expression that concealed exhaustion layered beneath responsibility. Her paycheck supported more than just her own needs. It helped her mother with rent, her younger brother's school supplies, and the endless small emergencies that life seemed to deliver without warning. Amara had grown up in a neighborhood where opportunity rarely arrived without resistance. Her mother worked double shifts as a home health aide, and her father had once been a warehouse supervisor before layoffs changed everything. From a young age, Amara learned the way of survival, but she also inherited something else, an unwavering belief in treating people with dignity, even when the world failed to return the same courtesy. Fresh Mart was not always an easy place to work. Customers came from all walks of life, and while many were kind, some carried invisible biases that showed in subtle ways. Amara had experienced the quiet stares, the tightened grips on purses, and the occasional condescending tone that implied she was less capable simply because of who she was. She rarely reacted outwardly, choosing instead to maintain composure, professionalism, and grace. Her silence was not weakness. It was endurance shaped by experience. That afternoon, the store was moderately busy. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead while carts rolled across polished floors. The scent of baked goods drifted faintly from the deli section, mixing with the soft background music that played through the speakers. It was an ordinary day, predictable, uneventful, and comfortably routine. Then the old man walked in. He did not attract attention with loud gestures or flashy clothing. Instead, he moved with a quiet confidence that felt almost out of place in the bustling environment. His hair was silver, his beard neatly trimmed, and his eyes observant but calm. He carried himself with the stillness of someone accustomed to responsibility, yet he dressed simply, without any outward display of wealth or status. As he walked through the aisles, he examined items carefully, placing only a few into his basket. Bread, milk, a small box of tea, canned soup. Each item seemed selected with thoughtful purpose, as if he understood both necessity and restraint. Some shoppers glanced at him briefly before returning to their own errands, dismissing him as just another elderly customer completing a routine trip. But Amara noticed him the moment he stepped into line. There was something about his demeanor that stood out, not arrogance, not urgency, but a quiet humility that felt rare. He waited patiently, allowing others to go ahead without complaint. When a child dropped a candy bar nearby, he gently picked it up and placed it back on the shelf without drawing attention. His action spoke a character long before words ever could. 2 customers ahead of him were served quickly. Then it was his turn. Amara smiled politely, scanning his items with the same professionalism she showed every customer. The total appeared on the screen. The man reached into his coat pocket with a calm motion, but as seconds passed, a subtle change crossed his expression. His hand searched again, slower this time. Then he checked another pocket, and another. A faint realization settled over him. He had forgotten his wallet. Around them, the atmosphere shifted almost imperceptibly. The woman behind him rolled her eyes slightly. A teenage employee stocking shelves paused nearby, watching. The security guard near the entrance glanced over with quiet curiosity. It was a small moment, yet one heavy with social tension that often followed such situations. The old man did not panic. Instead, he placed his hands gently on the counter and nodded, as if accepting an inconvenience rather than reacting to embarrassment. His dignity remained intact, even as the silence grew thicker around him. Amara's eyes moved from the screen to the man's face. She saw not carelessness, but sincerity, not entitlement, but quiet humility. And in that instant, something inside her stirred, a recognition shaped by years of watching people judged too quickly by appearance alone. She had seen customers treated differently based on how they looked, how they dressed, or how much money they appeared to have. She had also experienced being underestimated herself more times than she could count. The moment felt familiar, yet different in a way she could not yet explain. The line behind him began to grow longer. The store became quieter, and the weight of a simple decision began to settle on her shoulders. Amara had faced difficult moments before, but this one felt uniquely delicate. The store's policy was strict regarding unpaid items. Management emphasized procedure over personal discretion, and employees were expected to follow guidelines without exception. Yet policies rarely accounted for human complexity, and this moment carried a quiet emotional gravity that rules alone could not resolve. She observed the old man carefully. His posture remained composed, and his expression showed neither embarrassment nor irritation. Instead, there was a quiet patience, as if he was fully prepared to accept whatever outcome followed. He did not attempt to explain himself excessively or seek sympathy. He simply acknowledged the situation with dignity. Behind him, whispers began to ripple softly through the line. Some customers assumed he was forgetful. Others silently judged, interpreting the situation through their own biases. A few glanced at Amara, as though expecting her to react with strict professionalism rather than compassion. The unspoken tension grew heavier with each passing second. Amara's mind raced, but her expression stayed calm. She thought about her mother, who once forgot her wallet during a stressful day and faced public embarrassment at a grocery store. She remembered how small that moment had made her feel. She also remembered how no one had stepped forward to help. The memory lingered like a quiet lesson in empathy. The total on the screen remained unchanged. The old man's basket held necessities, not luxuries. Essentials that suggested need rather than indulgence. That detail mattered more than anyone else in the store seemed to notice. A subtle voice inside Amara reminded her of the financial strain she already carried. Her budget was tight. Every dollar she earned had a purpose. Covering someone else's purchase was not a small gesture for her. It was a sacrifice. Yet another voice spoke louder. It reminded her that kindness was not measured by abundance, but by willingness. The store manager was in the back office, unaware of the situation unfolding at the front registers. The security guard continued watching, curious but silent. The line behind the man shifted impatiently, the collective energy pressing toward resolution. Time stretched. Then Amara made a decision, without announcing it, without seeking attention, and without changing her calm demeanor. She reached into her own pocket and quietly tapped her card against the payment terminal. The machine beeped. Transaction approved. For a moment, the entire store seemed to freeze. The woman behind the man stopped scrolling on her phone. The stock clerk's hands paused mid-motion. Even the faint background music felt distant, overshadowed by the weight of what had just occurred. Amara gently placed the receipt into the bag and handed it across the counter with the same professionalism she offered every customer. There was no dramatic gesture, no visible expectation of gratitude, and no change in her posture. To her, it was simply the right thing to do. But to everyone else, it was something far more powerful. The silence that followed was not awkward. It was reverent. Customers who had moments earlier shown impatience now watched with softened expressions. Some felt guilt. Others felt admiration. A few seemed genuinely surprised, as if kindness of that magnitude was rare in a world driven by self-interest. The old man received the bag slowly, his eyes lingering on Amara's face with quiet intensity. There was a depth in his gaze that suggested he understood the weight of her action far more than anyone else in the store. Amara returned to scanning items for the next customer as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Yet internally, her heart beat faster. She knew the consequences that could follow. Management might question the transaction. Some co-workers might see it as unnecessary. And financially, the gesture would affect her already limited budget. But she did not regret it, because for her, dignity was never negotiable. Minutes passed, but the atmosphere inside Fresh Mart remained different. Conversations resumed, yet quieter. Movements continued, yet slower. It was as though the store itself had witnessed something deeply human and was still processing its significance. The old man did not leave immediately. Instead, he stepped aside, standing near the exit while observing the store with careful attention. His eyes moved from aisle to aisle, from customers to employees, and finally back to Amara. His expression remained calm, but there was now a subtle shift, an intensity hidden beneath composed stillness. Amara continued working, unaware that her simple act of kindness had set something far larger into motion, because the man who had forgotten his wallet was not just another customer, and the silence that filled the store was only the beginning. Nearly 15 minutes passed before the store's front doors opened again. Two well-dressed individuals entered, scanning the environment with focused attention. Their presence alone altered the atmosphere, drawing curious glances from employees and customers alike. They walked directly toward the old man near the entrance and stopped respectfully a few steps away. Amara noticed the interaction from a register, though she remained professional and focused on her tasks. The man's posture shifted slightly as he acknowledged the newcomers, yet his calm demeanor remained unchanged. What happened next unfolded quietly, yet its impact spread like a ripple across the entire store. The two individuals spoke with the store manager, who had just emerged from the office. Their expressions were serious but respectful. Within moments, the manager's face changed, from confusion to surprise, and then to visible astonishment. Whispers began to circulate again. Employees exchanged uncertain glances. Customers slowed their movements, sensing that something significant was happening. The security guard straightened his posture, now visibly alert. Then the manager walked directly toward Register 3. Amara looked up, slightly puzzled but maintaining her composed professionalism. She expected a routine question about the transaction, or perhaps a reminder about store policy. Instead, she noticed something she had never seen before. Her manager's expression carried an unusual mix of respect and disbelief. The old man approached the counter once more, but this time the entire store watched. There was a quiet gravity in his presence now, one that had not been fully visible earlier. The humility remained, but it was accompanied by an unmistakable authority that filled the space without the need for words. The manager stood beside him, clearly aware of something Amara did not yet understand. The truth soon became impossible to ignore. The man was not a struggling customer who forgot his wallet. He was the owner of a nationwide retail investment group that had recently acquired Fresh Mart's parent company. The revelation spread through the store like electricity. Employees who had barely noticed him earlier now stood frozen. Customers who had silently judged the situation moments before now avoided eye contact, realizing how quickly assumptions could mislead perception. Amara's hands paused briefly over the register. Her mind processed the information slowly, yet her expression remained calm, because to her, the man's identity changed nothing about the decision she had made. The store manager began explaining that the visit had been unannounced. The man had chosen to observe daily operations personally, without revealing his status. His intention had been to witness how employees treated customers when they believed no authority was watching, and what he had witnessed at Register 3 had left a lasting impression. The silence inside the store deepened, not out of fear, but out of realization. Amara had not acted for recognition. She had not acted for approval. She had acted purely out of empathy, and that authenticity was something the old man had been searching for. His gaze returned to her once more, filled not with superiority, but with genuine respect. The stillness in his expression carried the weight of someone who had spent a lifetime evaluating character, leadership, and integrity. Around them, The store seemed to hold its breath, because everyone present understood that this moment was no longer about a forgotten wallet. It was about something far greater. The atmosphere inside Fresh Mart shifted permanently after that revelation. What had begun as an ordinary afternoon transformed into a powerful reflection on human judgment, dignity, and compassion. Employees who once moved through their shifts mechanically now stood with heightened awareness. Customers who had silently observed now carried a quiet sense of introspection. Amara, however, remained grounded. She returned to her duties with the same calm focus, scanning items, greeting customers, and maintaining professionalism that defined her work ethic. The attention surrounding her did not inflate her ego or alter her behavior. If anything, it reinforced a value she had carried long before this moment. The store manager later reviewed the transaction logs and security footage, not as a disciplinary measure, but as a testament to something extraordinary. Policies were designed to maintain order, yet moments like this revealed the limitations of rigid systems when confronted with genuine humanity. In the days that followed, news of the incident quietly spread throughout the company's internal network. Executives, supervisors, and regional managers discussed the situation not as a breach of protocol, but as an example of ethical leadership at the most basic level. Because true leadership, they realized, was not always displayed in boardrooms or executive decisions. Sometimes it stood behind a register. Sometimes it wore a uniform and worked long hours without recognition. And sometimes it chose kindness when no one was watching. For Amara, life did not change overnight in dramatic ways. She still woke up early. She still helped her family. She still worked long shifts with the same quiet determination. But something deeper had shifted within her environment. Customers began greeting her with more warmth. Co-workers treated her with greater respect. Management viewed her not just as an employee, but as a reflection of the company's core values. Yet the most meaningful impact was internal. She realized that her decision had not been about money, status, or recognition. It had been about preserving another person's dignity in a vulnerable moment. And that principle transcended race, class, and social assumptions. The old man's visit continued to influence company culture long after that day. Training programs were updated to emphasize empathy alongside efficiency. Managers were encouraged to recognize employees who demonstrated ethical judgment. And within corporate discussions, Amara's quiet act became a case study in authentic customer care. But beyond corporate policy, the deeper lesson resonated on a human level. Many who witnessed the event reflected on their own assumptions. Some admitted they had silently judged a man based on his appearance. Others acknowledged that they had expected the cashier to respond strictly by policy rather than compassion. The moment exposed how easily bias could shape perception and how powerfully kindness could challenge it. Amara never sought recognition, yet she became a symbol of something rare in modern society: unconditional empathy without expectation of reward. Her action reminded everyone that dignity should never be reserved for those who appear wealthy, influential, or socially validated. Every person deserved it, regardless of how they looked, regardless of what they wore, regardless of whether they forgot their wallet. The store that once buzzed with routine noise now carried a quieter awareness, as if the walls themselves remembered that silent afternoon. Employees treated customers with more patience. Customers treated employees with more respect. And small acts of kindness became more frequent, inspired by one moment of courage that required no audience. In the end, the story was never about a rich stranger or a forgotten wallet. It was about character revealed under pressure. It was about a young black woman who chose compassion in a world that often overlooked her own struggles. And it was about the powerful reminder that true greatness is not measured by wealth, position, or authority, but by how we treat others when they are most vulnerable. Because sometimes the smallest act of kindness creates the loudest silence. And in that silence, the truth becomes impossible to ignore. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to share, comment, and subscribe to Black Voice Story for more powerful and emotional stories that inspire change and reflection.